Tonight we're going to review a model from 2008 Gibson Memphis. It's one of the more popular signature guitars that they made, the Lifeson ES-355. It's got a lot of unique specs that we'll have to dive into. And the reason for that is this guitar was built to mimic Lifeson's own custom order that he placed for 1976. So this is a very early recreation of a Norland era guitar before these things started to fetch the higher dollar premiums that we're used to seeing now today. So we get things like the old 70s style logo. We've got a harmonica bridge. Got a really cool mid-60s Maestro Vibrola on here, which you don't see very often on 355 style guitars. But the weird spec that might make you think it's a fake is actually on the back of the headstock. It's the volute. Look how strangely low it is. Doesn't it just look completely like a counterfeit? Like, I don't know what Gibson was thinking here. You gotta remember, this is the very early days of them even trying to reissue a volute. For comparison's sake, here's a 1977 Les Paul Deluxe with a volute. It's relatively small, and I understand that the Kalamazoo ones towards the later years of their production started to get huge, but notice how our little smiley's like right under here. It's nowhere near where your hand will actually be playing the guitar, so it has no way to affect your playability. Whereas if we line up our tuners here, it's so far down the neck. The bump starts about a quarter of the way through our first fret. Now, I think for the average player, miraculously, it's not actually in the way, but it just looks so strange, since the bump usually occurs well before the nut starts. Gibson has later revised that. Here's a 2018 74 reissue. It also has the volute back here, and it does seem a little bit lower than some of the originals. However, still nowhere near as far down the neck as our Lifeson friend here. Just one of those quirky specs. Kind of reminds me of like the really super high-end archtop guitars. And now you might be saying, hey Trogly, how do you know his original didn't have that? Well, here's the story. That was actually just recently auctioned off in 2022, so we have photos of it. It does not have a freaky volute, and it had the Gibson Schaller tuners on it, which unfortunately is not a spec on these inspired by models. But that thing brought a whopping $384,000. So needless to say, this guitar is very important to Rush history. If you're not familiar, they're a progressive rock band, and Lifeson has had a whole boatload of signature guitars with both Epiphone and Gibson. Usually when I think of him, I think about the Access Les Paul standards, because even though Neil Schon had the first signature that had the Access heel cut, Lifeson has had the most signature models of those, so a lot of people associate him with them. For example, we just recently reviewed the Epiphone version that had that nice figured red top, and Gibson Memphis in 2016 also followed this up with an ES-LP custom done up in a white finish as well. But this particular ES-355 helped shape the sound of their band because he used it all the way back then. You can see it in the old music videos like in Closer to the Heart, A Farewell to Kings, Hemispheres, Moving Pictures, Show Don't Tell. Before all those other Access models, this was his go-to. And since a lot of rock guys weren't using this style of instrument at the time, it helped shape their tone. He affectionately called this one Whitey for very obvious reasons. It's just such a blindingly beautiful guitar. Straight white, you get the gold, the tortoiseshell pickguard stands out, and all those other unique elements like your Veritone. There's another little, I would assume, coil splitter switch, but I guess we'll find out as we tear it apart. But they only set out to make 300 of these, and apparently they sold out pretty quickly all the way back in 2008. But if you're curious how I got this guitar, there's actually a bit of a story there. Jeff reached out to me to book a private help session just to verify the authenticity of the guitar. And after doing my due diligence and research, I was able to tell him, yep, it's completely authentic. But then the next problem arose. This was located in Canada, and he wasn't exactly sure on how to import things. I do have a forwarding service. Usually that's for sending things out of the United States, like you find a seller who can't ship to you in Greece. I can do that. But occasionally it can work the opposite way, depending on the seller and a few other things. So this was one of those particular times where I was able to help him get it to the United States. So this is not something I have to sell. It's just something for us to briefly enjoy. So let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench, take an individual look at its parts and specs, and then we'll get to that playing sample. Inside the Lifeson, let's take a look at these parts. Starting with the pickups, we've got some patina on them. However, all the gold has some, so it's possible this could have started life as a slight VOS finish. I'm not sure. But our label is just about completely faded away. But if you look closely, it still says 57 Classic. And the bridge is also matching to that. But our bridge reads 7.69k ohms, neck position 7.58, and the middle position for fun 3.92. But now let's talk about the switch. No, it is not a coil splitter. I wanted to make sure you were paying attention in this segment. It takes the veritone in and out of the circuit, because a lot of guys say veritone sucks the tone out of your guitar, so you've got the option of taking it in or out of the circuit. This is not something that was factory installed on his original custom order. That's something he put in on himself. So it's great. It's there if you want the veritone stuff, and not if you don't. But check out our Gibson Memphis route. Ridiculously clean for a semi-hollow. You can see the neck tenon joining into our body, and it's your regular layered maple poplar maple top into your maple center block. Then you've got your spruce bracing in between the layers. Where things get a little bit messier is your bridge pickup cavity, where they have to cut into your maple block to install the chokes for your veritone. But it's a little easier to see your maple poplar maple sandwiches. But in many photo shoots of the original guitar, you would see that the pickguard was removed. I was curious if they would recreate this, the yellowing underneath the finish. Now honestly, I don't think that's a recreation. That's just happening for the same reason his is like that. These are real celluloid pickguards, so if you trap them in a case, they'll start to off-gas, and that starts to deteriorate your finish, and these will eventually crumble into dust. So long-term storage of one of these, you should probably not have it on the guitar, because a light yellowing is just the first stage. Eventually, you can start actually peeling your finish off. You're going to eat away the gold hardware. Your frets will start to corrode over. It can get pretty nasty, but I found this kind of funny. If somebody wanted to display it to look close to his original, you've got the yellowing there. But now our fancy harmonica bridge. You can see it's got a wider bushing within the body than usual. However, the posts look fairly similar, but the saddles are like extra beefy on this one that they're using. It's actually a Japanese made part. Gibson's original ones were Schaller made in Germany, but this is the L5S bridge made in Japan. Probably just what was available at the time. And here's a quick peek at our Gibson tremolo. Now there are 4 screws here that you could remove to reveal 2 giant screws in the guitar, and then I think it's 4 of them that are small down here to secure it to the top, but I don't see any reason to do that today. The ball end of the string just goes into the claw, and then you have a light warble effect. Not particularly well known for staying in tune perfectly, but hey, they look cool. As far as the rest of the controls, it's just your regular 2 volumes and 2 tones. Unfortunately, we've lost our golden toppers on these for both a volume and tone. If we were going to replace these, we'd want to make sure we get the golden toppers, not the chrome ones. But inside the guitar, we can see the serial number, which is 40, which is kind of cool because of the whole R40 album. This was before that came out, but it's cool now. But the 355 has 7-ply binding along the top and 3-ply on the back that we'll see later on. And besides some surface wear marks, it's in relatively good condition. But our neck is extra fun. It's not actually mahogany. Not only do we have the volute, but we have a 3-piece maple neck with 22 frets, straight ebony fretboard. This is before they toyed around with Richlight, and we do indeed have true mother-of-pearl block inlays, so it's looking fancy. I get measurements of 1.7 inches at the nut, 2.09 at the 12, first fret neck depth 0.82, and surprisingly 0.93 by the 12. This neck has a lot of shoulder to it. I would personally categorize it closer to a D-shaped neck. You can definitely see what I'm talking about here on the 12th fret. It just has a really wide, shouldery neck to it, with a relatively flat bottom. Now, as far as the tooling marks straight from the factory, honestly, this one probably could have been done a lot better, but those were a little bit more obvious before I lightly conditioned the fretboard and cleaned the frets just a little bit. This thing was pretty filthy when it first got to me. But now our headstock. Truss rod does function. It's a bit stiff to turn, but we have a special Alex Lifeson truss rod cover, historic style. And then we do have the outline around the Gibson logo, as well as our mother of pearl inlays. That's just common. And how you know it is real, that's all due to their sandblasting technique. Something else I noticed over here, this area right here just shows where the headstock veneer has like slightly lifted. It's similar to the phenomenon of like the light finish checking around the bottom of the binding, as well as around the edges of it on the cutaway, or like down here by the bottom of the strap button, it looks like a crack. No, that's just the seam line showing of the 2 rims coming together. Moving on to the back side, not too much to talk about here. So I've taken a peek at that 3-ply binding that I was talking about earlier. Sometimes less is more because the black layer stands out, but you can see some wear to the gold strap button in both of our locations. And check out how chunky the heel is. That's another attribute of this one. But earlier I told you this was a 3-piece maple neck. If you catch it in the light just right, you can actually see the seam lines right there. So that is recreating a 70s spec, which is cool. I got a real chuckle out of the seller's description, claiming that this was the white finish being worn away, showing the yellow layer underneath. No, that's stand rash. There is some along the edges as well. If you ever get a yellow staining on your guitar, it means you're using a non-nitro safe stand. Surprisingly though, I don't see any on the bottom side. As far as white finishes go, everything seems to be par for the course. Now there's our freaky volute. Yep. it's authentic, even though it certainly doesn't look it. But here's the backside of our Grover tuner, so you can see some finish checking back here. And they also put our serial number on it. AL for Alex Lifeson, 040 out of 300. Not a bad serial. Now we'll do a quick blacklight test just to make sure there's no finish touch-ups or anything like that. Everything on the face of the guitar looks good. Sides of the heel looking nice. I was curious if we'd see anything up here though, because I do notice that there is some lacquer impression lines around our Gibson logo from where somebody left a clip-on tuner on this for an extended period of time, but it doesn't look like it discolored the finish. Only impressed upon it. But yep, everything's looking good on this one outside of our stand rash. But now looking back here, we do have a few other lines that could either be from a stand, like you can see a small mark here and there. It's hard to get my camera to focus on this, but these three lines look like maybe a strap was laid on it or something. But our heel joint area is looking good, so that's the most important thing. And there we go, we can see a very small stand rash mark along the edge. Then okay, we've got a lot at the bottom here too. I didn't notice that under regular lighting. I don't know what they were feeding these Lifeson models, but they're really heavy. I mean, it weighs 7.5 pounds. That doesn't sound bad, but all the weight is concentrated in the body. I was not going to be surprised to see like 10 pounds show up on the scale. Or you know what? Feeling it again, I think a lot of the weight is actually in the neck. It's just an unbalanced guitar, which makes it seem a lot heavier than it is. But let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how these 57 Classics sound. That was with the baritone out of the circuit. It's very full and meaty sounding. Now when we kick the baritone in, just kidding, let's put it onto 1. Out of the circuit again. A slight difference, not enough to really notice, but as you cycle through your chokes, you'll get tones like these. We'll just do it with the bridge pickup. And for the neck pickup, just for fun. So there we go, the Alex Lifeson Signature ES-355 by Gibson Memphis. What are my final thoughts on this thing? It's still one of the coolest 355s I've ever seen. It has its own character and personality, and that's exactly what you want in a signature guitar like this. However, I hate to say it, I didn't really like this particular example. It's just very unbalanced and heavy. The neck profile is not my favorite. That doesn't mean it won't appeal to other people. But I will give the compliments to the tones. These 57 Classics take this from jazzy Lucille type looking guitar to a hard rocker. So that's exactly what you probably want to do if you want to play some Rush. But alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, you need to check out the 1978 reissue Chuck Berry signature model next.